The rain fell in sheets across Neo-Shanghai, the drops dancing in the neon lights that lined the crowded streets. Takeo hunched his shoulders against the downpour, clutching his worn jacket tighter around his thin frame. His research bag, stuffed, with notes and star charts, bumped against his hip as he hurried through the back alleys of the city's oldest district. "This better be worth it, Jin," Takeo muttered to himself, thinking of his smuggler friend who'd passed him the auction invitation. He wasn't supposed to be here respected. Xenorchaeologists didn't hang around underground auctions, but respected. Xenorchaeologists also didn't have to choose between paying rent and buying food, which was exactly the position Takeo found himself in this month. The address led him to what looked like an abandoned warehouse. A burly man with a cybernetic eye scanned Takeo's invitation and nodded toward a rusty door. Inside, the warehouse transformed into something else entirely: polished floors, holographic displays, and the wealthy elite of 3-star systems mingling. Over glasses of expensive drinks, Takeo stuck out like a sore thumb in his patched jacket and scuffed boots. He grabbed a drink from a passing server bot, just to have something to do with his hands. The liquor burned his throat, but he forced a smile as he moved through the crowd. He needed investors, people willing to fund his research into the lost celestial civilization. Years of academic rejection had left him desperate, but not hopeless. Going once, going twice, sold to the gentleman from Mars Colony. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the room as a small statue changed hands for more money than Takeo made in 5 years. He sighed, watching rich collectors bid on items they'd lock away in private vaults. These artifacts belonged in museums, available for study, not gathering dust in some billionaire's collection. Still, he dutifully noted potential investors, people who might be interested in his theories about the celestial Xan advanced race that supposedly vanished overnight 10,000 years ago. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our final lot of the evening. The crowd hushed as a large cylindrical container was wheeled onto the stage. It looked ancient, covered in symbols that made Takeo's heart race. He pushed forward academic curiosity. Overriding his caution, recovered from the ruins of the Helix Nebula outpost, we present what may be the last surviving celestial. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Takeo froze, his drink halfway to his lips. Impossible. The Celestials were extinct, that was established fact. The auctioneer gestured dramatically, and the front panel of the container became transparent, revealing what appeared to be a humanoid figure suspended in a blue liquid. Even through the liquid, Takeo could see the characteristic luminescent patterns on its skin that matched descriptions in ancient texts. Bidding starts at 50,000 credits. The room erupted as collectors shouted numbers, each bid higher. Then the last. Takeo watched in horror. This wasn't just an artifact, this looked like a preserved body. It belonged in a proper research facility, not in private hands. 500,000 to Mr. Zhao, the auctioneer called out. Takeo recognized the name with a chill. Li Xiao was notorious in academic circles for destroying artifacts during his research. The thought of this specimen in his hands made Takeo sick, and 500,000 going. Once the lights flickered, container on stage hummed, the blue liquid inside bubbling suddenly. Technical difficulties, the auctioneer said nervously. 500,000 going twice with a crack, the container's surface splintered. Blue liquid began to seep onto the stage. Crowd backed away, security drones moving forward. In the confusion, the auctioneer looked desperate to close the sale. Due to the condition, we'll accept 300,000 something. Came over Takeo in that moment, a mix of academic passion, moral outrage, and possibly the strong drink. He pulled out his research grant card, the one with the funds meant to keep his tiny lab running for the next 6 months. 300,000? He shouted, waving the card. The auctioneer pointed at him. Sold. Everything happened in a blur. After that, the panicking auction house staff, eager to avoid further incident, rushed him through the payment process and helped him transport the leaking container to his apartment via service elevator. The whole time, Takeo's mind raced between exhilaration and absolute terror. What had he done? He'd spent every credit he had on what might be nothing more than an elaborate fake. His tiny apartment wasn't, built for a man-sized ancient container. But somehow they wedged it into the main room, right between his fold-out bed and cluttered desk. The delivery men left quickly, clearly wanting nothing to do with the still-leaking container. Alone now, Takeo stared at his purchase. Even if this was just a preserved specimen, it could validate his research. It could finally prove the celestials had been real, not just legends. His hands trembled as he examined the container's control panel, trying to make sense of the ancient symbols. "Okay, let's see what you are," he whispered, pressing what he hoped was the release mechanism. The container hissed. The remaining blue liquid drained through vents in the floor. The front panel slid open completely, releasing a cold mist into his apartment. Takeo stepped back, grabbing a lamp as his only available weapon. The mist cleared slowly, revealing the figure inside. It's not a preserved specimen, a woman, or at least a female-looking being. Her skin was pale with swirling patterns that glowed with a soft silver light. Her hair, floating around her face, as if suspended in water, was the color of starlight. Her eyes opened, suddenly completely silver with no visible pupils. Takeo yelped, dropping the lamp with a crash. The being stepped out of the container. Movements graceful despite what must have been a long time in suspension. She looked around the cluttered apartment, taking in the star charts on the walls and the books stacked on every surface. Before her gaze settled on Takeo, she tilted her head, studying him. Then, to his shock, she knelt on the floor in front of him, bowing her head. "You paid for me?" she asked in perfect, unaccented standard language. Her voice like chimes in a gentle breeze. Takeo stammered. I bought the container. I'm a researcher. I study the Celestes." She looked up, silver, eyes meeting his. "Then I'm yours now," she said simply. As if this was the most natural thing in the world, Takeo felt the room spin slightly. His academic discovery had just become infinitely more complicated. He wasn't looking at history anymore. He was looking at a living, breathing member of a species thought extinct for millennia, and she thought she belonged to him. Takeo hadn't slept all night. How could he? A living, breathing celestial was sitting cross-legged on his apartment floor, examining his collection of ancient texts with curious silver eyes. "You should rest," she said, without looking up from a book about her own supposedly extinct civilization. "Your human body requires at least 6 hours of sleep per cycle." "How do you know that?" Takeo asked, rubbing his tired eyes. "How do you even speak our language?" The alien who had told him her name was Lyra tapped her temple. While in stasis, I was still partially aware. "I absorbed information from my ... previous owners." Her voice faltered slightly on those last words. Takeo winced. "Look, I need to make something clear. I didn't buy you. I bought what I thought was an archaeological specimen. People aren't property here." Lyra finally looked up, her head tilting in that curious way that reminded Takeo she wasn't human. Despite her mostly humanoid appearance, a transaction was made. "My culture holds such bonds as sacred. Until the debt is repaid, I am yours to command." "There is no debt," Takeo insisted, running his hands through his already messy hair. "You're free to go wherever you want." Lyra's luminescent skin pulsed briefly with a blue light in emotional response. Takeo couldn't interpret. "Would I go? My world is gone. My people are gone." She gestured to the books spread around her. "Even your most learned scholars have only fragments of knowledge about my kind." That was true enough. Takeo had spent his entire career piecing together scraps of information about the Celestials. And here was a living encyclopedia sitting in his apartment, refusing to leave. "Fine," he sighed. "You can stay until we figure things out, but you're my guest, not my whatever you think you are." Lyra nodded solemnly, though Takeo suspected she was just humoring him. The next morning brought a new challenge. What to do with an alien who insisted on following him everywhere? Takeo had a shift at the university library, a part-time job that barely covered his rent, but gave him access to research materials. "You can't come with me," he told Lyra, who was already standing by the door. Dressed in clothes he'd hastily ordered from a delivery service, the simple tunic and pants did little to hide her unusual appearance. Her skin's faint glow was visible, even through the fabric, and nothing could disguise those silver eyes. "I must accompany you," she said simply. "What if you need something?" "Need privacy and normalcy." Takayo's voice rose in frustration. "And I need to not show up at work with an alien." Lyra's skin dimmed, darkening to a deeper blue. "I have caused you distress. I will modify my appearance." Before Takeo could stop her, she closed her eyes in concentration. The glow of her skin faded until it merely looked like unusual paleness. And when she opened her eyes again, they had changed to a dark brown. "How did you?" Takeo began. "Minor cellular manipulation. It's uncomfortable but manageable for short periods." She adjusted the hood of her jacket to cover her still unusual hair. "I can pass as human from a distance. Will this suffice?" Takeo stared at her, suddenly realizing the incredible adaptability her species must have possessed. No wonder the ancient texts spoke of celestials with such reverence. "I guess that works," he conceded. "But at the library, you need to act normal. Just pretend you're my research assistant." The university library was housed in a centuries-old building, one of the few structures that had survived the Great Quake of 2156. Takeo nodded to the security guard and swiped his ID, hesitating before introducing Lyra. "This is my new assistant from Offworld. She's helping with my research." The guard barely looked up from his screen. "She needs a visitor pass." "Name?" "Lyra," she answered before Takeo could intervene. "Lyra of the 7th House of Lyra." "Chen," Takeo interrupted. "Just visiting from the Europa colony." The guard printed a temporary badge, and they hurried inside before more questions could be asked. "Chen is not my house name," Lyra whispered as they walked through the towering shelves of physical books still preserved for their historical value even in the digital age. "It's a common Earth name," Takeo explained. "And please, whisper. Libraries are quiet places." Lyra nodded seriously, then proceeded to follow Takeo so closely she nearly stepped on his heels. When he stopped at his desk in the archive section, she stood directly behind his chair, perfectly still. "You don't have to stand there like a statue," he hissed. "Sit down somewhere. Read something." She obediently took the seat next to his, but continued staring at him expectantly. "What?" he finally asked. "What would you have me do? What task shall I complete for you?" Takeo sighed. "Look, normal assistants don't wait for commands like robots. They take initiative." Lyra considered. "This. What would please you most? What is your research focus?" Despite his frustration, Takeo couldn't ignore a direct question about his work. "I'm trying to map possible celestial outpost locations based on astronomical data from ancient texts. There are references to a network of 17 stations, but I've only identified 3 potential locations." To his surprise, Lyra laughed, a tinkling sound like crystal chimes. "You're looking in the wrong places." She pulled his star chart toward her. "These aren't physical coordinates, they're dimensional anchors." "What?" "My people didn't just travel through space." Her finger traced a pattern on the map. "We moved between dimensions." "What you're seeing are the points where those passages were anchored to this reality?" Takeo's mouth fell open as years of misinterpreted research suddenly clicked into place. That would explain the anomalous readings at the Helix Nebula site. "Yes, that was our primary junction point." Her voice grew softer. "I served there before. ... She didn't finish, but Takeo felt a pang of empathy. Whatever had happened to her civilization, she had survived it only to become a collector's item, passed from owner to owner. While conscious enough to know what was happening, their conversation was interrupted by a sharp voice. "Takeo, there you are." Dr. Hana Ito, the department head and Takeo's most vocal critic, stood before them with arms crossed. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at Lyra. "I don't recall approving a research assistant for you." "She's volunteering," Takeo stammered. "From Europa." Dr. Ito's eyebrow arched skeptically. "Indeed. Well, your volunteers shouldn't have access to restricted materials without proper clearance." She gestured to the ancient scrolls spread across the desk. "I've been meaning to speak with you about your recent funding." The department received notification of a substantial withdrawal. Takeo felt sweat breaking out on his forehead. Can't explain. He purchased critical research materials, Lyra interrupted, her voice suddenly authoritative. Materials that will validate his theories about dimensional transit in prehistorical civilizations. Dr. Ito looked startled at Lyra's confident tone. And who exactly are you to make such claims? Lyra smiled, a perfect imitation of human politeness that nonetheless made Takeo nervous. Someone who has studied these matters extensively? Perhaps you'd like to see our preliminary findings? Without waiting for permission, she began drawing on Takeo's digital notepad, creating complex equations and diagrams with astonishing speed. Dr. Ito leaned closer, her skepticism gradually giving way to grudging interest. This is unusual. Methodology, she admitted. But it works, Lyra said. The professor's theories are correct. They just needed refinement. Takeo watched in amazement as his harshest critic and an alien from a supposedly extinct civilization discussed theoretical archaeology right in front of him. Whatever happened next, he realized his life had changed forever all because of an impulsive bid at an auction he shouldn't have even attended. The first sign of trouble came 3 days later. Takeo was cooking dinner simple noodles with vegetables. The best he could manage on his tight budget while Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by his research materials. She'd been reorganizing his notes into what she called proper contextual alignment, occasionally muttering in her musical native language, when she found particularly egregious errors in his theories. The apartment's lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. In the darkness, Lyra's skin began to glow more intensely, casting the room in a soft blue light. Power outage, she asked, looking up from her work. Takeo shook his head, a sense of unease creeping over him. The backup generator should have kicked in immediately. A heavy thud against the apartment door made them both freeze. Takeo Nakamura, a deep voice called from outside. This is building security. I need to speak with you about an unauthorized... Resident Tokeo's eyes met Lyra's glowing silver ones. Someone had reported her presence, or worse, someone had tracked her here. The man who lost the bid, Lyra whispered, rising to her feet with fluid grace. Li Xiao, he's found me. Before Takeo could respond, the door burst open. 3 men in black tactical gear rushed in, weapons drawn. Weren't building security. The insignia on their shoulders belonged to Xiao Industries' private military force. Step away from the specimen, the leader ordered, aiming his weapon at Takeo. She's not a specimen, Takeo said, instinctively moving in front of Lyra. She's a person, the leader smirked. Mr. Zhao is offering to buy back his property at double what you paid? A generous offer considering you acquired stolen goods. I wasn't stolen. Lyra's voice was calm, but cold. I was sold. Repeatedly. Your employer would be my 7th owner in 3 centuries. The men exchanged uneasy glances, clearly not expecting the specimen to speak for herself. The leader recovered quickly, his weapon still trained on Takeo. Mr. Xiao doesn't care about ancient history, wants what he paid for. He didn't pay for anything, Takeo argued. His bid wasn't finalized when the container opened. The leader's finger moved to the trigger. Final chance? Step aside? Or he never finished his sentence. Lyra moved with impossible speed, stepping around Takeo and raising her hand. The air in front of her shimmered, and suddenly the leader was thrown backward, as if he'd hit an invisible wall. His companions fired, but their energy pulses dissipated against the same invisible barrier. We need to leave, Lyra said calmly, as if she hadn't just demonstrated technology centuries beyond Earth's capabilities. More will come. Takeo could only nod, too shocked to speak. Grabbed his research bag always packed with essentials for field expeditions and followed Lyra out the back window and down the fire escape. They ran through rain-slicked alleys, Lyra leading the way with unerring confidence despite never having explored the city before. When they finally stopped in the shadow of an ancient temple that had somehow survived Neo-Shanghai's rapid modernization, Takeo bent over, gasping for breath. What was that? He panted. That shield. How did you? Lyra's skin had dimmed. Again to pass as human, but her eyes still gleamed in the darkness. Basic gravitational manipulation. All Celestials can do it. Basic. Takeo straightened up, staring at her in disbelief. You just stopped energy weapons with your bare hands. It's not with my hands, she corrected. With my mind. The hands are just for focusing. She sounded so matter-of-fact that Takeo almost laughed, despite their dire situation. Why didn't you tell me you could do that? Lyra looked genuinely confused. You didn't ask. After a pause, she added, and it would have been inappropriate to demonstrate my abilities without your permission because I'm your owner. Takeo couldn't keep the frustration from his voice. Because you're my savior, she replied softly. You freed me from stasis. Whatever your intention, the result was my liberation. Rain dripped from Takeo's hair as he processed her words. The way she saw their relationship was so foreign to him, yet he couldn't deny that he felt responsible for her. We need somewhere safe to go, he said finally. Somewhere Zhao's men won't look for us. Lyra nodded. The female scholar from your university, the one who showed interest in your work after I explained it. Would she help us? Takeo considered Dr. Ito. She'd been surprisingly supportive since their last interaction, even inviting him to present at the next department meeting. Maybe she has a research outpost in the mountains. It's isolated, meant for deep study without distractions. Perfect, Lyra said. How do we reach her? Takeo pulled out his communicator, then hesitated. These can be traced. Allow me. Lyra placed her hand over the device. Her skin pulsed with light, and the communicator's screen flickered. With strange symbols before returning to normal, I've redirected the signal path. Won't be able to track it now. Takeo raised an eyebrow. Is there anything you can't do? A shadow passed over Lyra's face. I couldn't save my people.
Oh.
The simple statement hung in the air between them. Reminder that despite her powers, she had experienced loss on a scale Takeo could hardly imagine. Dr. Ito didn't ask many questions when they arrived at her outpost. Soaking wet and exhausted, she simply showed them to spare rooms and provided dry clothes. It wasn't until the next morning, over a breakfast of simple rice porridge, that she finally addressed the obvious. You're not from Europa, she said to Lyra. I'm judging by your rather dramatic arrival in the middle of the night. You're in some kind of trouble. Takeo glanced at Lyra, who nodded slightly. She's a celestial, he said, watching Dr. Ito's face carefully. The last of her kind, as far as we know? Dr. Ito's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. That's impossible. The Celestials disappeared over 10,000 years ago. 9,843 years, Lyra corrected, and we didn't disappear. We were systematically eliminated. By whom? Dr. Ito asked, her academic curiosity overtaking her initial disbelief. That's what I've been trying to remember. Lyra's hands tightened around her bowl. My memories of the final days are fragmented. I was a guardian of the seventh house, tasked with protecting our dimensional anchor. When the attacks began, I was ordered into stasis. I was supposed to wake when it was safe. Her voice grew quieter. It was never safe. Takeo felt a weight settle in his chest. She wasn't just a scientific discovery or a cultural curiosity. She was a refugee, a survivor, carrying the weight of an entire civilization's end. That's why Zhao wants you, he realized. Not just because you're a celestial, but because of what? You know, Dr. Ito leaned forward. What do you mean? Whatever wiped out the Celestials, one of the most advanced civilizations in known history, would be a powerful weapon. Takeo looked at Lyra with new understanding. And you were there? When it happened, a sudden explosion shook the building, sending dishes crashing to the floor. Through the window, Takeo could see black shuttles descending from the sky. They found us, Lyra said, rising to her feet. Her eyes shifted from brown back to their natural silver, and her skin began to pulse with light. Won't let them take me again, and I won't let them hurt you. For the first time, Takeo saw not an alien girl who thought she belonged to him, but a warrior princess prepared to defend what she cared about. And somehow, against all logic, he had become one of those things. The mountain outpost shook with another explosion. Through the window, Takeo counted at least 3 black shuttles hovering outside, their searchlights cutting through the morning mist. "We need to run," Dr. Ito said, already grabbing emergency supplies from a cabinet. "There's a tunnel system beneath the outpost, built during the resource wars." Lyra shook her head, her silver eyes fixed on the approaching threat. "Running only delays the inevitable. These people will never stop hunting me." She turned to Takeo, her luminescent skin pulsing with determination. "I need to face them." "That's crazy," Takeo protested. "There are too many of them, even with your abilities." "I don't intend to fight them all." Lyra's voice was calm, but resolute. "I need to confront Zhao himself. He must understand that I am not an object to be owned." Dr. Ito interrupted their argument by shoving a backpack into Takeo's hands. "Noble sentiments won't stop energy weapons. The tunnel entrance is behind the bookshelf in my office. It leads to an old monitoring station 3 kilometers down the mountain. Go now, while I delay them." "We can't leave you here," Takeo insisted. Dr. Ito smiled grimly. "I have friends in the Global Science Authority. Attacking a GSA outpost is a serious offense. Even for someone as wealthy as Zhao, I'll be fine they won't risk harming an official representative." Another explosion rocked the building closer this time. Dust rained from the ceiling as the lights flickered. "They're breaching the east wall," Dr. Ito said. "Go." Takeo grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the office. To his surprise, she didn't resist. Once inside, they quickly found the hidden door behind the bookshelf, revealing a narrow staircase. Descending into darkness. "Thank you," Lyra said to Dr. Ito, who stood guard at the office door. "Your kindness will be remembered when the stars realign." Dr. Ito looked momentarily puzzled by the strange farewell, but nodded respectfully before turning back to face whatever was coming. Takeo and Lyra hurried down the stairs, the hidden door sliding shut behind them. Emergency lights activated along the tunnel walls, casting everything in a dim red glow. They ran in silence for several minutes, the sounds of the attack growing fainter behind them. "Will she really be okay?" Takeo asked between breaths. "Placed a protection mark on her," Lyra replied. "It won't last long, but it should prevent any serious harm." Takeo nearly stumbled. "You can do that? Just mark people for protection?" "Only temporarily, and it requires energy I can't easily spare right now." Lyra's glow had dimmed noticeably, her skin now barely luminescent in the dark tunnel. They continued in silence until the tunnel widened into a small chamber filled with outdated monitoring equipment. Dusty screens lined the walls, most dark and lifeless, though a few still displayed basic weather and geological data. Takeo slumped against a console, the adrenaline that had kept him going now fading. "What do we do now? Where do we go?" Lyra began examining the equipment, her fingers dancing over ancient interfaces with surprising familiarity. "First, we learn more about our enemy. The Earth technology is primitive, but serviceable." "Thanks," Takeo said dryly. "Always nice to have my entire planet's achievements dismissed as primitive." Lyra paused, turning to look at him with genuine remorse. "I spoke thoughtlessly. Forgive me. Your world has accomplished much in a short time." She returned to the console, coaxing it to life with a series of commands. "There. I've accessed what you call the darknet. Let's see what we can. Learn about Li Xiao." Takeo watched in amazement as information began flooding the screen's financial records. Property holdings, security protocols for Zhao's various facilities. "How are you doing this?" "Information systems follow universal patterns," Lyra explained, her focus never leaving the screens. "Once you understand the underlying structure, the specifics are just ... details." As the data accumulated, a troubling picture began to emerge. Zhao wasn't just a wealthy collector with an unhealthy obsession for rare artifacts. His company had been systematically acquiring ancient technology from various archaeological sites around the solar system. "He's building something," Takeo murmured, scanning the procurement lists. "These components. They're all related to energy manipulation and dimensional physics." Lyra's hands froze over the keyboard. Her skin paled to an almost ghostly white. No, he couldn't possibly understand what he's doing. "What is it?" Takeo moved closer, trying to make sense of the technical specifications on the screen. He's attempting to recreate our dimensional gateway technology. Lyra's voice was barely above a whisper. The very technology that attracted the destroyers to us in the first place. She closed her eyes, and for a moment her skin rippled with patterns Takeo hadn't seen before, complex, shifting geometries that seemed to fold in on themselves. I remember now, she said, opening her eyes. The final days, the warnings that came too late, the shadows between stars. What are you talking about? Takeo asked gently. Call them the Void Heralds. They exist in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the energy released by advanced civilizations. Lyra's voice had taken on a distant quality, as if she were reading from ancient memory. We didn't know they were there until we built our network of gateways. Energy signatures attracted them like beacon fires in the dark. Takeo felt a chill run down his spine. And Xiao is building the same technology? Not exactly the same, Lyra said, returning her attention to the screens. His understanding is incomplete. But even a flawed gateway could create enough of a dimensional disturbance to alert them. So he's not just dangerous to you, he's potentially dangerous to the entire planet. Takeo ran his hands through his hair, trying to process the escalating stakes. We need to stop him. Yes, Lyra agreed. But not by running or hiding. She pointed to a location on one of the screens. His primary research facility is here, on an artificial island in the East China Sea. That's where he's building the gateway. Prototype. You want to go there? Just the two of us against his entire security force? Lyra turned to face him fully, her silver eyes intense. Takeo, I've spent centuries in stasis, passed from owner to owner like an object. When you purchased my container, you did more than free Mew, gave me a chance to prevent the same fate that befell my people from happening to yours. She hesitated, then did something unexpected. She reached out and took his hand, her cool fingers intertwining with his. I know I've spoken of debt and service, but the truth is more complex. My people believe that when lives intersect in moments of great change, it creates a bond beyond obligation, I think. I think that's what happened with us. Takeo looked down at their joined hands, one human, one alien, yet somehow fitting together perfectly. In that moment, he realized that whatever had started as a bizarre impulse purchase at an auction had transformed into something he couldn't fully explain but couldn't bear to lose. So, we're going to an evil billionaire's secret island to destroy his dimension-ripping machine and prevent space monsters from noticing Earth? Takeo attempted a smile despite his fear. It's just another day for an archaeologist, right? Lyra's skin brightened slightly, the celestial equivalent of a smile. We'll need help. The tunnel system likely connects to the old transportation network. If we can reach a communications hub, I can contact others who might assist us. Others? What others? Takeo asked, suddenly alert. During my brief periods of consciousness over the centuries, I learned that some of my people's allies survived, species that existed alongside us, who understood the threat. Lyra's expression grew. Determined, they've been watching, waiting. And now, perhaps it's time for them to act. Dawn broke over the East China Sea, painting the water in shades of gold and pink. From their position on a small fishing boat, Takeo and Lyra watched as the silhouette of Zhao's artificial island came into view, a massive structure of steel and glass rising from the ocean like some futuristic castle. Your friends are late, Takeo whispered, scanning the horizon nervously. After Lyra had sent her mysterious message through an ancient communication relay they'd found in the tunnel system, she'd assured him that help would come. That had been 18 hours ago. They'll be here, Lyra said, with quiet confidence. Her appearance had changed again, her luminescent skin now dark and seemingly human. Her silver eyes hidden behind brown contacts. Only Takeo, who had grown to know her so well over the past weeks, could spot the subtle glow that occasionally pulsed beneath her disguise when her emotions ran strong. The old fisherman who had agreed to bring them close to the island in exchange for a surprising amount of ancient celestial knowledge about ocean currents and fish, migration patterns called out from the helm. This is as far as I go, he said in a gruff voice. Security drones patrol the waters beyond this point. Takeo nodded his thanks, helping Lyra gather their meager supplies. Had a plan, not a great one, but the best they could manage with limited resources. They would pose as maintenance workers, using ID cards that Lyra had somehow duplicated through one of her incomprehensible technological tricks, as they prepared to. Transfer to the small inflatable raft tied to the fishing boat's side, the sea around them suddenly began to churn. What's happening? The fisherman looked around in alarm. There's no reef here to cause waves like this. Takeo grabbed the railing as the boat rocked violently. Lyra, is this? She smiled, a genuine expression of joy lighting up her face. They're here. The water parted and something massive rose from the depths. It wasn't a submarine as Takeo had half expected, but a living creature, colossal being with iridescent scales and multiple appendages that moved with impossible grace for something its size. It resembled an earth octopus only in the vaguest sense. Its body structure clearly evolved for different pressures and environments than any terrestrial ocean. The fisherman dropped to his knees, either in prayer or terror. Takeo couldn't tell. For his part, Takeo could only stare in awe as the creature gently extended one tentacle-like limb toward their boat. The tip of it opened like a flower, revealing a small chamber within. The oceanic consciousness, Lyra explained, already moving toward the offered limb. They were allies to my people for eons before the fall. They dwell in the deep waters of inhabited worlds, watching and waiting. You want us to go inside that thing? Takeo asked, unable to keep the tremble from his voice. Lyra took his hand. They've hidden from your kind for centuries, Takeo. This appearance is a great honor. The fisherman finally found his voice. The great ones from the old stories. He whispered. My grandmother spoke of them. I thought they were just legends. Sometimes legends are just truths, waiting to be remembered, Lyra said kindly. She pressed something small and crystalline into the old man's weathered palm. For your help. When you need the seas to be kind, place this in the water and think of today. Before Takeo could question what she'd given the fisherman, Lyra was pulling him toward the creature's extended limb. Together, they stepped into the chamber, which closed gently around them. Instead of darkness or the expected smell of a sea creature, they found themselves in a space filled with soft, blue-green light and air that tasted fresher than anything Takeo had ever breathed. We're inside a living being, he marveled, watching, as patterns of light moved across the chamber walls, in what seemed like a form of communication. Yes, Lyra replied, placing her hand against one wall. Her skin began to glow in response, patterns synchronizing with those of their host. And they're taking us directly to Zhao's facility. The oceanic consciousness can bypass his security systems by approaching from beneath the island's foundations. How many other Earth legends are actually aliens? Takeo couldn't help asking. Lyra gave him a knowing smile. More than you might think. Earth has been visited and watched over for millennia. Some came as explorers, others as refugees after the Void Heralds began their hunt. The journey was brief but surreal, traveling within a living submarine from humanity's oldest myths. When the chamber finally opened again, they found themselves in a dimly lit maintenance tunnel deep beneath Zhao's facility. The gateway is 3 levels up, Lyra said, her voice now serious. I can sense its energy signature already. It's wrong, unstable. He's further along than I feared. Takeo checked the simple disruptor weapon that Dr. Ito had provided before. They parted ways. It wasn't much against Zhao's security forces, but it was better than nothing. What's the plan? Sneak in and sabotage it? No. Lyra's expression hardened. We need to speak with Zhao directly, make him understand what he's risking, and if he doesn't listen, then we stop him by any means necessary. They moved through the facility with surprising ease, Lyra's knowledge of security systems allowing them to bypass most checkpoints undetected. When they encountered guards, she used her abilities to create brief distractions, lights flickering, doors opening, unexpectedly, allowing them to slip past. The gateway chamber, when they finally reached it, took Takeo's breath away. A massive ring of metal and crystal dominated the center of the room, crackling with energy that made the air taste like metal. Scientists and technicians bustled around it, making adjustments and taking readings, and there, overlooking it all, From a glass-walled observation deck stood Li Xiao himself, a tall, elegantly dressed man whose calm demeanor couldn't quite hide the obsessive gleam in his eyes as he watched the gateway's construction. "Wait here," Lyra whispered, stepping out of their hiding place behind a bank of computers. "Lyra, no." Takeo hissed, but it was too late. She was already walking confidently across the chamber floor, her disguise falling away with each step. By the time the first alarm shout went up, she stood revealed in her true form skin, glowing with internal light. Silver eyes shining, an undeniable power radiating from her very being, the room fell silent, all eyes turning to the apparition. In their midst, Ivan Zhao, who had begun to shout orders, fell quiet when Lyra raised her hand toward the gateway. The energy crackling around the ring suddenly redirected, flowing toward her in streams of light that she shaped and controlled with elegant gestures. "Li Xiao," her voice carried clearly through the stunned silence. "You seek power you do not understand. I am what you have been searching for, the knowledge and the warning." Security personnel began to move in, weapons drawn, but Xiao held up his hand to stop them. His eyes were fixed on Lyra with an expression of wonder and hunger that made Takeo's skin crawl. "The celestial," Zhao breathed. "More magnificent than I imagined?" "I am the last of my kind," Lyra continued, "because we built what you were attempting to build. The gateway between dimensions is not just a door, it is a beacon, and what waits on the other side has been devouring advanced civilizations for millennia." Takeo watched as doubt flickered across Zhao's face, quickly replaced by stubborn determination. "Mere legends to keep lesser beings from seeking power." "Not legends," Lyra countered. "History, my history. The history I will not allow to become yours." With a sudden gesture, she directed the gathered energy back into the gateway. The ring began to spin, faster and faster, as electricity arced across its surface. "What are you doing?" Xiao shouted, panic replacing his composure. "Stop her." "I'm showing you the truth," Lyra said calmly, even as chaos erupted around her. "Glimpse only a shadow of what comes if you continue." The center of the ring darkened. Not with the blue portal Zhao had expected, but with a consuming void that seemed to absorb light itself. And within that darkness, something moved, shapes that hurt the eyes to look upon. Entities that existed in geometries foreign to human understanding. Scientists ran from the room. Security guards fired at Lyra, but their energy weapons were absorbed into the shield she had created around herself. Only Takeo and Zhao remained, both transfixed by the horror taking form within the gateway. "Do you see them now?" Lyra asked, her voice strained with the effort of controlling the portal. "The Void Heralds. They feed on civilizations that reach beyond their dimensional boundaries. They consumed my world. They will consume yours." With a final gesture, she collapsed the portal, sending a shockwave through the facility that knocked both men off their feet. Emergency alarms blared as systems overloaded and shut down. In the sudden darkness lit only by Lyra's glow and emergency lights, Xiao looked broken, his obsession shattered by the glimpse of true cosmic horror. "It's over," Takeo said, approaching. "The fallen businessman. The gateway is destroyed." "Not destroyed," Lyra corrected, her light dimming as exhaustion took its toll. "But altered. It will never function as he intended now." Xiao looked up at her, fear and awe battling in his expression. "What are you going to do with me?" Lyra knelt beside him, her silver eyes searching his. "Nothing. Your punishment is knowledge, the burden of understanding what nearly happened. Live with that truth and use your resources to protect this world, not endanger it." As the facilities' backup systems came online and distant voices indicated the approach,